Okay, how's that for sound? Okay, that ought to work. Can you hear me now? Yes, no sound, no sound. You should be able to hear me now. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, the no sound part is because the stupid the stupid phone wants to connect to the car, which is way over there. But for some reason it connects to the Bluetooth in the car and then I don't have sound. So sorry about that. All right. Start over. Hey, Chuck Holton here. We are camping tonight in the middle of nowhere, Armenia, and it's been raining all day. We had a really good day. We hiked about 7 miles up on the tallest mountain in Armenia, called Aragats, and yeah, it's coming down. We're in southern Armenia, and it's really coming down. As I said, we're camping at kind of a camping resort tonight, just because of the rain and everything. Uh, so we'll see how comfortable we are tonight in the rain. But before I go to bed, I wanted to talk to you about what is going on with Israel and whether or not they can actually win the war. Do they have what it takes to actually win this war? Now, if everybody would leave them alone, they probably would do just fine. But as you know, there's been a ton of pressure put on Israel to essentially lose the war. And Israel's been pushing back on that and saying, no, we're not going to lose the war. We're going to keep doing this until we win, until we get rid of Hamas, until we make Israel safe from their attacks. And what they found when they went into Gaza is that it wasn't just a few, hold on a minute. I put the focus on. People are blowing up my phone. It wasn't just a few Hamas fighters that they had to take out, or even a few thousand. It was essentially the whole of Gaza that was the problem. I mean, when you had hundreds and thousands of Gazans celebrating in the streets as the rockets flew over their heads toward Israel, it sort of gave you the sense that perhaps this wasn't just a cut and dry, we got to go in there and fight a military force of Hamas and defeat them, and then it's all good. The United States, the UN, and other agencies, other countries have been pushing Israel very hard to aid and give comfort to those people inside Gaza, most of whom hate the Israelis. This puts Israel in a very difficult position. I mean, just imagine what would have happened in World War II, for example, if the United States had to be sending aid and assistance to Japan while we were fighting the war with Japan. How long do you think that war would have gone on? What would have happened if Great Britain was supposed to send aid to Germany while Germany was bombing their cities? Do you understand? That's exactly what Israel's being told to do. I mean, I have the app on my phone, and I get these notifications every day. So do you if you have the app. Israel is still being bombed from Gaza. And Gaza is not shooting at Israeli forces. They're shooting at Israeli civilians, non-combatants. They are hoping to kill as many civilians as possible. They didn't attack only military targets on October 7th. They attacked civilian targets, mostly. Some military, but mostly civilian targets. Hamas makes it very clear, even now, they're not mincing words here. They're saying, we want to wipe out Israel, all the Jews, everyone. So how long would World War II have gone on if the United States, hey, thank you, Christian, if the United States and uh, Great Britain, the Allied powers were supposed to be sending aid into the Axis powers even while they were still at war. You say, but there are people starving in Gaza. Yeah, there were people starving in Germany too. There were people starving in Italy. There were people starving all over Europe during World War II. You see, the thought process is different now. We have a much different sort of sense of morality. Now, I'm going to liken this to something what I learned as a child. I remember my dad told me once when I was, I don't know, probably 4th, 5th, or 6th grade, something around there. My dad told me, I don't ever want you to start a fight. But son, if somebody starts a fight with you, you better end it. You do whatever you have to do to end the fight and end it as quickly as possible. When I got into the Army, I learned that the quickest way to end a fight is to be far more violent than the guy that's fighting you. They taught us, they codified it into sort of a maxim. Speed, surprise, and violence of action. That third one, violence of action, is a fancy way of saying you need to hit your enemy so hard. You need to make your enemy hurt so badly. You need to make him so miserable that he will beg you to stop, that he will beg you to surrender to you. He will want to surrender to you. He'll do anything to get you to stop hurting him. And I was taught when I was in the Army, that is the way to end a war quickly. We put that into practice in the Gulf War. If you recall, actually Gulf War II, I guess. We went in there with shock and awe. That was the plan. We hit Iraq so hard in the opening days of the war that we had Iraqi soldiers out in the desert that were surrendering to journalists. I remember that. I'm old enough to remember that. Shock and awe. Now, the United States during the war in Afghanistan and in Iraq, we started to transition into this idea that you have to defeat your enemy without actually offending him. You have to help your enemy develop, get jobs, that they just need better paying jobs and then they'll stop hating you. And it didn't really work out very well for us in Iraq and Afghanistan, did it? The last war I remember that the United States actually won, like completely won, was the first Gulf War, when we got an unconditional surrender from Saddam Hussein. We went in and in 100 hours crushed the resistance in Iraq in the first Gulf War in 1990. I'm sorry, yeah, 1990-91. And after 100 hours, the Iraqis had had enough, and they begged us to stop. And we got an unconditional surrender. Actually, I think we made some concessions at the last minute, if I remember right. But they were willing to give an unconditional surrender. In the second Gulf War, which began the War on Terror in 2003, we started in Afghanistan in 2002, and then we well, late 2001. And then we went into Iraq in 2003. We changed our tactics. We decided that it wasn't moral to hit the enemy so hard that he would want to give up. We decided that instead what we needed to do was help our enemy while we were trying to root out the bad players in their midst. These were insurgencies, right? So they weren't, by and large, pitched battles, traditional military conflicts where you have force on force, soldiers in uniforms, things like that. It wasn't that. What we had instead was skinny little guys running around in flip-flops amidst the civilian population and trying to kill us little by little. A roadside bomb here, an RPG there, a sniper here, things like that. And so we really didn't know who the enemy was until he was shooting at us. The population was by and large friendly to our enemy. So we were trying to exist in a population that pretty much hated us and wanted us to go away. And at the same time, we were sending in, I remember I did some embeds with these guys. We sent in some special units that were civil engineers. And we sent them in and said, okay, you guys go in and develop micro hydroelectric plants and build roads and build bridges. And I mean, especially in Afghanistan, these people have had a culture for 6,000 years and they haven't figured out doorknobs yet, or toilets, or lights, or paved roads, or beds, like, regular beds. So let's go help them with all that stuff, while at the same time we're trying to root out the bad elements that are living among them. And what happened? The Taliban in Afghanistan benefited as much or more from our nation-building efforts than the civilians did. And that worked so well for us that we spent $1 billion a week in Afghanistan alone for 20 solid years. U.S. taxpayer dollars. That's right, you heard that right. $1 billion every week for 20 years in Afghanistan alone. And then we pulled up stakes and left and gave our enemy $86 billion worth of American weaponry and equipment, which is now already making its way all around the world. They're having big problems in Pakistan with terrorists coming in and fighting against the government with American-made weapons, body armor, night vision, everything that they got out of Afghanistan. We're going to be facing American military hardware that was left in Afghanistan for the next 50 years. Mark my words. No question that those weapons will be shooting back at us for the next 50 years because we couldn't be bothered to collect it up and at least put it in a hole and destroy it or burn it. Something. No, we just pulled out and left it. To include helicopters, armored vehicles, explosives, night vision goggles, which to this day, if I take a pair of night vision goggles out of the United States and let a guy in Syria look through them, I'm literally breaking federal law by doing so. It's called the ITAR regulations. But yet, the Biden administration left $86 billion worth of ITAR-related stuff, to say nothing of thousands of computers with sensitive information on them that we just left. And We were hardly off the ground in Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan before the Chinese were flying in cargo planes and loading up all those U.S. military computers and taking them back to China, where they had their hackers work on them and extract American secrets from them. And so this is the country, America. This is the country that's now going to Israel and saying, we can tell you what you need to do in this war. You need to listen to us because we're the experts. So listen to us about how to win this war. And if you don't, by the way, yeah, we're going to stop sending you weapons and hardware. I mean, so the problem is, Israel is being told they need to defeat their enemy without actually offending him. And it didn't work out very well for us. Do you think that this pier is being built for other reasons besides humanitarian? And if I was Israel, I would tell them to man their own aid. Well, I do think the pier is being built partially to take Palestinians out of Gaza and bring them to the United States. I think that's a likely outcome. That very well could happen. But I think it's also window dressing. It's also security theater, election year theater for the Biden administration to spend $160 million or something and say that they're helping the people in Gaza. I mean, that they're going to be helping Hamas. Now, again, let's go back and look at World War II as a template. World War II, we won, if you recall, and won handily by extracting a unconditional surrender from Germany. We did that by doing things like, firebombing Dresden. Okay, I've been to Dresden. It's a beautiful city today. It's been all rebuilt. But the United States mercilessly firebombed that entire city, killing tens of thousands of civilians. It was horrible. It wasn't nice. It was horrific. But in our estimation at that time, the United States calculus was, we need to do whatever it takes to force Germany to surrender as soon as possible. And the only way to do that is to hurt them so badly that they will beg us to stop. And short of using a nuclear weapon, which we actually considered using on Germany and might have used if the war had not ended when it did, if we had engaged in the type of warfare that we are trying to tell Israel to engage in now, back then, we might still be fighting World War II to this day. Or we might all be speaking German. We understood something back then that we have lost. And that is that if someone starts a war against you, the most moral thing you can do is to end it as quickly as possible. Not by rolling over and giving up. If an evil enemy starts a war against you, you have to do whatever it takes to end the war as soon as possible. And unfortunately, what it takes to end the war as soon as possible, to get the enemy to give up, is to hurt him and his people so badly that they beg you to stop before you just wipe them off the face of the earth. That is what works. That's what worked in World War II. It's what worked in the first Gulf War. Anytime you find me, try to find me an example throughout history recent history or ancient history, I don't care, where any country helped its enemy while they were fighting the enemy and actually ended up winning the war. I can't think of any. I can't find one. And so just looking at history, just looking at what we know from the past, the fastest way to end the war in Gaza would have been to give Israel everything they need to absolutely wipe out Gaza, house by house, building by building, street by street, until the Gazans begged for mercy. Not sending aid to Gazans, not pumping aid, not giving them clean, fresh water from Israel for free, not parachuting MREs on top of them, not building a pier that we can use to just set up a giant pump and pump American tax dollars into Gaza to try to keep it breathing. Look, Gazans are suffering. There's no question about that. But if history is any judge, if history is any indication, gives us any lesson about how to win a war, how to end a war as soon as possible, the Gazans are not suffering near enough yet. And this war has already been drawn out far longer than it needed to be because of that. And I hate to say that. It is a very politically incorrect thing these days. There we go. Wi-Fi died. Okay, I'm back. Show me a war, any war, where the aggrieved party, the party that was attacked, that is fighting for its survival, won by aiding the enemy. You can't find one. And so the United States, the United Nations, am I back? I don't think I'm back yet. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, now we're back. So the United States, the United Nations, other European countries are all pushing Israel, trying to force them to do something that literally has never been done. It's never been successfully accomplished. Today in Israel, a convoy of trucks was coming across the border from Jordan into the West Bank. They were aid trucks full of aid that was headed to Gaza. There was a group of Israeli protesters that stopped the trucks. Come on. Sucking wind very badly. So this group of Israeli protesters attacked the trucks, threw the aid off the trucks, something that I've been saying all along, that needed to be Israel's message all along. As they were destroying the aid, as they were tossing the aid off the trucks, these Israelis were saying, return the hostages. Return the hostages. And so at least some Israelis are starting to get it. I mean, I think a lot of Israelis are actually starting to get it. Some of them are actually starting to do something about it and say to Hamas, because we know it's going to Hamas. We know it's prolonging the war. We know it by prolonging the war, we're prolonging the misery of our own people who are still being held hostage. Tell Israel that he knows where Sinwar is, and he'll tell Israel if Israel will promise not to go into Rafah. I mean, think about that. And yet, if we were an ally and we knew where Yahya Sinwar was, would an ally go to Israel and say, you have to do this for us before we will actually help you end this war? That the United States wants the war to continue, at least until the election. And that's a pretty cynical way to go about it. So we are not supporting Israel. The United States is not, but they're helping Israel. They're trying to pretend that they support Israel, but they really don't. And it's very clear. There's no question. They don't support Israel. So, and tell them, we want you to support Israel for real. And if you can't support Israel for real, then we can't support you in the election. I think so. Ever win another war? You tell me. Can a country win a war when it's funding both sides? Can any country win a war when it's funding? America decides to change its mindset about war? I don't think America should get into any more wars ever again. Because we admit it takes to win. So, yeah, the internet's gotten really bad all of a sudden, so I'm gonna end it there. But that is what I had for you today. God bless you all. From a writer. Take care.